Coming up next on a special edition of Pause, we'll travel to Columbia, where Senator Claire McCaskill will return to the birthplace of her political career to promote her new book full of autobiographical stories from her life as a public servant. She hopes those stories will encourage young women to be strong and assertive when following their dreams. And we're also going to sit down with KMOS TV's program director, Michael OKeefe, to discuss our new local lineup called Your Thursday. That's coming up next on Pause. And we're here today with Senator Claire McCaskill. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
It's great to be here.
You've written a book entitled Plenty Ladylike, and it's sort of a memoir of your political history. Tell us a little bit, first of all, what made you decide to write a book now?
Well, we had this amazing campaign in 2012 where Todd Akin became nationally known for his inappropriate comments about legitimate rape. And after that race, I thought, well, it would be great to write a book about that race because there was a lot of intrigue behind the scenes, and I thought it was interesting for people who particularly followed politics. So we pitched the book on that basis to the publishers in New York, and the publisher that bought it said, no, I would like you to expand it and give an honest and candid assessment of 30 years in political life for a woman who started out in her 20s and ended up in the United States Senate. So together with my co-author, we went about getting that done. Took us about a year and a half, and we have Plenty Ladylike.
And going through the book and looking at your, I guess, origins, if you will, in terms of your parents, I mean, they seem to sort of, early on in your life, kind of not encourage you to go into politics per se, but encourage you to be independent and to, not be afraid to try to do the things that you wanted to do. How much of that has played out in your political career, do you think?
Well, I say to people, my hope for this book is that fathers will buy it for their daughters, because my father gave me permission to be a little bit unusual for a young woman. He encouraged me to be outspoken. He encouraged me to be opinionated. He reassured me that someday boys would like me, even though they may not like it when I was in junior high or high school or college, but it would be okay. And I hope that fathers would buy this book and give it to their daughters to give them the message that being ladylike does not mean you have to be quiet. Being ladylike means being strong and assertive. And my parents did. They were active. They weren't politically powerful or anything, but they volunteered for campaigns. And they exposed us to that at a young age. I was kind of forced to say trick or treat and vote for JFK when I was 7 years old. So I didn't grow up thinking that politics was nasty. I grew up being taught that most people in political life were honorable and were trying to serve their country. So I never shied away from the interest in politics, and eventually, obviously, made it my life's work.
Well, in your first foray into Missouri politics and the state legislature, reading some of those stories now and thinking about the things that you experienced those times, do you think things have changed? Have things improved for women in politics based on the things that happened to you more than 20 years ago?
Well, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that I have never been marginalized or been treated with disrespect as a senator in Washington. My colleagues, I think they all understand that the women who have gotten there are pretty tough cookies. We all have had to travel difficult paths to get elected to the Senate, and I believe all of us are treated well. Part of that may be age, but I think it's also that when you are at that level, there is an understanding that everyone's equal and we're all peers. But when I began, back when I was in my 20s and single as a legislator in Jefferson City, it was quite a different story. Now the bad news is, while this book was being printed at the printer, we had 2 incidents of interns coming forward with inappropriate conduct by legislators, and both those men lost their careers, the Speaker of the House and a state senator. And that was depressing to me, because it meant that I was an intern back in 1974 and told stories in the book about what I went through as an intern. And the idea that young women today are still having to endure inappropriate conduct on the part of elected officials, it makes me angry, it depresses me, but I'm going to work with these young women. I've talked to one of them, and we're going to try to band together and see if we can't start an advocacy group that will help some young women that are in that situation.
And certainly as your career progressed and you got at those higher levels, that tended to be, it seems like that's less and less of the issue for you. And more, I found it really interesting that you're sort of a really clear-eyed realist about things that people will, for me as a non-politician, I would never do things like this. I would never participate that. But you're willing to defer your hopes sometimes. When you were running for prosecutor, you were willing to sort of step back and kind of do what you felt like you needed to do. How much of that has gotten you to where you are today in terms of being able to sort of pick your spots and be patient?
Well, I think, first of all, I knew from a very young age that nobody was going to tap me on the shoulder and say, it's your turn. I knew no one was going to ever clear the way for me. I knew very early I was going to have to fight for everything I achieved, tooth and nail sometimes. So that meant I had to be highly strategic. And that's the other thing I want this book to tell young women, is that strategy matters. And there's nothing untoward about being strategic. There's nothing untoward about, I think sometimes when women are called calculating or manipulative, that is, women take that as an insult. I want women, when someone says you're, calculating something, well, that's not a bad thing, to calculate something, to figure out how you get there. So what I really tried to do in this book was show the various times in my career where I had to use strategy to move around obstacles, and sometimes that's a timeline. Sometimes that's when is there an opening for you to rise to the next level and hopefully get promoted by your bosses, which in my case is the voters, but for many women it would be actually in the workplace.
And then when you made that move to auditor, it was interesting to me as I read that part of the book, because it just doesn't seem, on its surface, it doesn't seem like that would be a step that you would take. So as you were thinking about that, what was your decision-making process to go ahead and pursue that post?
Well, I knew that, first of all, it was a statewide race, and it would give me experience running statewide. But secondly, if you're a woman, the two things at that point in my career, I realized people needed to be convinced that, one, I was tough enough to handle the job, and second, that I was knowledgeable enough to handle the job. My goal was, in fact, to run for governor. So I'd done the prosecutor's job, and I had a great resume and lots of experience in the courtroom prosecuting the most heinous criminals you can imagine. And that, I think, helped in my resume in terms of being tough enough. But the auditor's job gave me an opportunity to know a lot about state government. And I realized that that was the kind of job I could go and investigate government, where I could find wrongdoing on behalf of government, which would make me a taxpayer champion, that I was in fact uncovering waste and fraud of taxpayer money. And that would, I thought, add to a resume, so that not only would I be tough enough to handle a job, but I would know where all the nonsense was going on in government and be in a much stronger position as an executive to clean it up.
And of course, then when you did have the opportunity to run for governor, it didn't go your way. How do you bounce back? I mean, obviously that's been something that was on your mind for a long time, according to the book. So how do you come back from that?
Well, it was really hard. I did the unthinkable in challenging a governor of my own party. It had never been done successfully in the state. It's only been done a few times in the whole country. Very hard to do. To me, that was the mountain I was climbing. And so when I won that primary and defeated the governor in the primary, I then made a lot of mistakes between that primary and the general election, and I lost. So it was a time of reflection. I'll be honest, I spent way too much time baking chocolate chip cookies. I laid around and felt sorry for myself. And it was a combination of factors that kind of got me off the couch. My husband, for one, said, you got to get back at this. And secondly, I began getting calls from my now colleagues in the Senate asking me to run for the US Senate against another incumbent less than 2 years later. And I first, of course, said, no, are you kidding? I'm still shell-shocked from having lost this race. But eventually, I came around, and it was one of those times, I know, for young people when they hear their parents say things like, well, when one door shuts, another opens, and you just hear blah, 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 blah. Well, all of a sudden, I realized that my mom had been right all those years, and that when you take a risk and it doesn't work out, you learn. And then that allows you to take those lessons and move on. And I learned a lot in the governor's loss. And so I used all of those things I'd learned, and I applied them to the race in 2006 and ended up getting elected to the United States Senate.
And I think that's one of the things when you talk about the message you're trying to send to women, young women particularly, that notion of like failure is not the end of everything. And you know, I feel like men get that message a lot, that just keep pushing and you're gonna, but maybe women don't necessarily hear that as much from their parents and in school and things like that.
I think that women hear too often the voice of look for security, be secure, don't rock the boat. And so this book wants to blow that up. You need to rock the boat. You need to try to move forward. You need to take risks. And I really hope that in the last chapter of the book, I talk a lot about the disease to appease. And the disease to appease is one that a lot of women have. We want to make everybody happy. We want everyone to like us. And it's very hard to be successful as a leader and make everybody happy. In fact, it's impossible. If you're not making people mad, you are getting nothing done. I promise you, you're getting nothing done. So getting over that need to, you know, I mean, we're the conciliatories in the family, right? We're bringing the kids together, not fight. We're bringing the sisters together to not fight. We're bringing the neighbors together to not fight. And so I think it's not easy for women to adapt to the role of, hey, I'm going to have to offend some people to move this thing. And that's what I want women to be more comfortable doing, to kind of get over that disease to appease.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the current climate in Washington. You know, the traditional narrative, at least lately in the media, has been gridlock and words like, you know, intractable and things like that. As a person who's clearly on the inside of that, what's your sense? Is that an accurate picture?
Well, first of all, the American people have decided in their wisdom to send one party to the Oval Office and to put another party in charge of Congress. Now, this is not a scenario under which we're going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, but the American people made that decision. So to a certain extent, the American people are okay with conflict in our democracy because they made that decision. So it does make it harder. It particularly makes it harder in today's politics and today's world of media information, because now people can go to sources of media for affirmation instead of information. When I was young, my parents had us watch the evening news, and it was either Walter Cronkite or Huntley and Brinkley, and then we sat down at the dinner table and we talked about what is going on in the world. Those were straightforward newscasts. Mm-hmm. That wasn't MSNBC that twists it one way, or Fox that twisted it another way. It was right down the middle. That is not happening as much. People are grabbing snippets off the internet, or they're grabbing a narrative that they're hearing repeated without really looking at what the facts are. That makes it harder for us to get compromise. Because all the voices, nobody calls me in Washington and says, I'm calling to ask Senator McCaskill to compromise. They're calling on one end or the other, yelling at me, do not compromise, do this, or do not compromise, don't do that. Whereas I think most Missourians want us to compromise. They're just too busy trying to figure out if they can pay for summer camp or if they can afford to retire to take the time to call and write. So I try to listen to their voices even though they may not be calling me all the time.
So do you have, I guess this is an impossible question, but how do we fix these sort of polarities that are happening now? What needs to happen, do you think?
Well, moderates need to get a little more love. I hope people who believe in compromise and understand that it's necessary for our country to thrive begin speaking out with a louder voice. They are now being drowned out by the purists. That if you're not perfect, then they have no use for you. We've got some of those running for office now, and that would be, I think, a step backward if we elected a president who is campaigning on the notion that compromise is evil, and it's either my way or the highway. So I really hope, if people don't begin speaking out, I think people are going to get more and more tired of government and have less and less faith in government. There's so much negativity and cynicism about government now. As that continues to rise, they're going to gravitate towards more and more extreme candidates to say, I'll shake it up. Well, I mean, we can look at somebody like Donald Trump as a good example. I mean, can you imagine how well he would do as president if all he's doing is calling everybody an idiot, you know, and stupid? You know, world leaders, people who disagree with him in Congress. I mean, that's probably not the way we're going to get past dysfunction.
Right.
It's probably a way we're going to embrace dysfunction in a historic fashion that I don't think would be good for our country.
As you look forward from where you are now, is Senator McCaskill being Senator McCaskill, or?
No, I mean, I'm no to anything else. I am thrilled to be Senator McCaskill. I am the luckiest woman on earth. I am so blessed. I love my state. I love the people of this state, even though it's complicated sometimes, because Missouri is can be a little schizophrenic. We have a legislature that's in Jeff City that's so conservative. Like, they like to talk about Sharia law and stuff that I don't think is really what's on most Missourians' mind. On the other hand, the majority of our statewide office holders are Democrats. So this is not always the easiest state to represent, but it's a state I love, and I love the work. It's intellectually challenging. It is, I'm a policy wonk, so I have this wonderful blessing of being able to study the internet rules one day, what do we do with ISIS the next day, and it's just such a wide variety of topics that. And I think I'm getting some things done. I am doing oversight in a way that we've been able to really change some things for taxpayers in terms of contracting accountability, which I talk about in the book, helped get rid of earmarks, which I talk about in the book. So I still feel like I can get things done, and I'd love if Missourians would continue to have me as senator. That's the only job I'm interested in.
And for young women who might see this, who are thinking about their future and thinking about, going into perhaps politics or some public service, what kind of advice would you give them based on all your years of experience now?
Well, for one thing, I hope they read the book, because not only do I talk about the strategy and the tactics and being comfortable with ambition, I also talk about my personal life. I talk about my failed first marriage. I talk about some of the heartaches in my family and mistakes I've made that deal with my personal life, and the challenge of having children while you're having a very high-profile career. And for many years, I was a single mom with young children running around the state trying to get elected. I hope they read the book, because I think it will show them that there is a path around the obstacles, and you can be a good mother. Can't be perfect at anything. They say, can you have it all? Well, not perfectly, but you can do it. And you can do it in a way that my 3 children are wonderful human beings. They're grown and independent, and I think some of the fact that I was so engaged in my work helped them to gain independence and make them better and stronger adults. And so I hope that women out there that are thinking about public service begin planning, working on campaigns like I did when I was in high school, and finding a way forward. And I'm always here to help. If there's a young woman in Missouri that's interested, she should reach out to my office, and I'll go out of my way to visit with her about my ideas on how she can reach her dreams.
Okay, so real quickly, your prediction, our next president will be?
Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Okay. Thank you, Senator
Thank
McCaskill.
you.
We appreciate you taking the time for joining us on Pause.
Absolutely.
And welcome back to Pause. Time now for us to take a few minutes to look at what's coming up later this evening. We've got some new things coming your way here on KMOS. And joining us right now is our program director, Michael OKeefe. Michael, welcome.
Hi, Phil. How are you doing?
Good. So let's talk about what's the shows that are coming up. We have a new lineup on Thursdays called Your Thursday. Tell us a little bit about that.
A little bit about it is because Thursday night is the best night on PBS to make sure that all the other programs are there for you to see. But Thursday night is Pause, an extraordinary show, if I do say so myself. Anyway, but we'll follow it up in quick succession with programs from that you're familiar with. Show Me Ag, with Kyle Vickers as host, talk about agribusiness here in Missouri, and we'll alternate that in different weeks with a program called Feast, which is produced in St. Louis. The publisher of Feast magazine, Catherine Neville, is really working with the culinary folks all throughout Missouri and even into Illinois and Kansas a little bit to let everybody know what's going on food-wise and where the food comes from and where, more importantly, it goes and who's are the innovators behind it. But and then later on in the evening we have Arts Upload, which is it's arts from all around the region, Kansas City over to throughout Columbia, through all the region. And I'm zipping through my head. I'm not going through the full order of the programs, but it's so exciting I can't stop thinking about it.
Well, I know at 8 o'clock, coming up later at 8 o'clock, we have a new show that's going to debut for the first time. KMOS presents Missouri Life, right?
That is in collaboration with Missouri Life magazine. There's 7 episodes, as I understand. It's a road trip through 7 different towns, starting in, well, includes, I don't know where it starts, but it goes Columbia, Warrensburg, Macon, Warsaw, Lebanon, Lexington, and Herman.
And Benton County.
In Benton County.
So we've got quite the trip. If you have been a loyal viewer of KMOS, think you're going to enjoy it. We hope you will. It is sort of a feature of all the different places and people around mid-Missouri that make the area great. So we're excited to bring that, and it's a great partnership with our friends at Missouri Life magazine. So that's an all-new program that's going to start this evening.
Brand new.
And then we also have some other shows, local shows coming up tonight.
Exactly, for the folks who like film and who doesn't, Upstart Film, our very own Josh Leonard will be interviewing different screenwriters and filmmakers, authors, actors, actresses, and talking about their craft and what it means to Missouri and the places where they're from. And of course we have Lowdown, which is formerly known as University Magazine. So if you're wondering about what's going on campus and the people behind it, the students and all that, so you can get the lowdown on Lowdown, and that's followed by the sports page, which follows the University of Central Missouri Mules and Jennies.
So it's all night long, starting with this program at 7 o'clock, and then just going on for the rest of the evening. Right. You'll be able to see the debut of all these new local programs, including Pause, including a sports page, and all the stuff in between.
Exactly.
You know, the other interesting thing about, which we didn't really talk too much about, is the Arts Upload program, which is a partnership between KMOS and KCPT in Kansas City. So we've kind of worked together to create a program here that features arts in our area here on the western side of the state.
It's co-hosted. Angela Hagenbach is one of the hosts. I know her as a jazz singer from years ago, and I'm not familiar with the other host name off the top of my head.
Colin LaVoot.
Colin,
yep.
Okay, excellent.
And you know, if you haven't seen Angela, by the way, if you haven't seen her out or anything, fantastic performer, and we're really happy to have her and Colin both working with us on the program. It's a great pairing with the two of them working together, and it'll sort of take you all around different kinds of arts, different kinds of experiences in the art world. So we're hoping that you'll enjoy that program also, and that's coming up later this evening as well.
So definitely, Your Thursday is your Thursday. Don't hesitate to join us each and every Thursday, and I'm sure you'll have a presence each week still with Pause, correct?
We will be here with Pause, and we'll have more local programming coming your way. So as you tune in each Thursday night, you'll look forward, I hope, to Your Thursday. Yeah. We'd love to hear what you have to say about it. So in the meantime, if you have thoughts or opinions or comments you'd like to share with us here at KMOS, feel free to email me, and you can do that at phoffman@ucmo.edu. We're happy to hear from you and your opinions about what we're doing here with the new Your Thursday lineup, or anything else that we air here on KMOS. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. Certainly appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure, and I'm glad to talk to the viewers as well.
Great. So that's it for this episode of Pause. We'd like to thank Senator Claire McCaskill for joining us earlier, and Michael OKeefe, our very own Michael OKeefe, for joining us to talk a little bit about Your Thursday here on KMOS. We hope you'll stay tuned because Your Thursday starts right now, coming up next here on KMOS. Thanks for joining us.